I feel bad. 15 years ago, I would have been destroying this coach week after week, and I would have had nicknames for him and done the whole thing. But I actually feel bad for him. I think he was in a horrible situation. Like Brian Barrett on our Boston pod did a really nice job Friday night of talking about like how long Darvin Ham was an assistant coach, right, before he got the job. How long Mike Malone's been in the NBA. You know, even somebody like Spoelstra, who worked under Riley for years and then finally got the job and then had that first year where they're all trying to get him fired. And then Joe Maz, 2 years is basically sitting in the second row. That's why my dad calls him second row Joe. And he just gets thrown in with this like skeleton coaching staff, and I can't think of a worse situation that a new coach has been thrown into. It's not like they could have hired somebody else. The season was about to start. It wasn't like people were sitting around. I still think they handled it badly. I still think they really underestimated the value of having that one experienced dude on the bench. But I also thought he was terrible. Like, I really genuinely think he was terrible, like terrible as a coach in the NBA playoffs. I thought he was terrible in the Hawks series. I have no idea how that went to 6. The Philly, he didn't even start making adjustments until game 6 and then game 7. Then this series, predictably, he got annihilated by Spoelstra. I mean, this was checkers versus chess. And I feel bad for him because I don't think he should have been in the position.
Okay, but when we go back to the timeline, they were screwed.
They were screwed.
They were screwed unless they were going to bring in Vogel. I don't think Brad wants to coach. I don't know if they'll beg him. So are you saying he should be fired?
I don't think he will come back. I think they will move on and get a bigger coach because especially with the amount of money that the ownership is shelling out for salaries, if you're not going to make a major move, you can't bring the coach back and say, hey, we got him a really good bench coach. This year's going to be different. It felt like he lost the team in this series. I've been watching basketball my whole life. You can kind of see when a team's kind of done. And are the guys done with each other? Are they done with the coaching situation? What is it? This is a team that over and over again just got outwitted and out-executed down the stretch. So the other thing, this is one of the things I was thinking. I was thinking about like the most frustrating, really good teams that I've watched in my lifetime. And the number one version of this was the Drexel Blazers team, which had this really nice run from 89 to 92. They made the finals in 90. They made the finals in 92. The 90 finals, they absolutely could have won. They beat the Lakers in a playoff series. They had just a shitload of talent. They were really athletic. They were deep. They were a lot like the Celtics team. And yet over and over again, they'd shoot themselves in the foot and they'd blow games. They'd lose close games. They'd just do dumb things. And you could always kind of outwit them. And it just was who they were. And they kind of left this legacy of, man, that team was so talented. Hard to believe they didn't win a title. And I fear that that's the Celtics run. It's the same kind of thing, except in this case, Stevens was such a good coach and Ime did such a good job last year. Last year it was like, oh, they're a year ahead of schedule. Just wait these next few years. And remember we talked last year and I was saying to you about, I know this is a young team, but I've seen this happen too many times with the NBA with windows. And I think there's real urgency for this team to win because I don't know what's going to happen next year. This might be their best chance right now.
You said it in 20.
But I said
was
it
kind
in
of like
22.
Yeah, no, I get it. I remember you saying it in 20, but a lot of it, you can start mapping it out going, okay, well, what's going to happen around them, right? And in 20, there were a bunch of I'm not going to remember all of them, where you're like, this might be their best chance. And really, when you're in the finals, it feels like it's probably your best chance. You're not going to get to go back all the time, and it's actually pretty rare. If you were to say that now about this team, I don't know that would be true. I mean, other than writing off Miami all the time like I do, I don't think you'd go into next year going, oh no, look at the Miami Heat. They're going to win 55 games unless the roster changes. The Milwaukee thing might actually enter into weird phase. The Philly thing could easily be worse.
There's shades of weirdness with the Milwaukee thing.
Yeah. Atlanta's whatever. Toronto's whatever. The Knicks got some work to do. And then there's Cleveland, who maybe that was the young team getting their ass kicked and all the regular season numbers meaning nothing. that was the best defensive team in the league, and they couldn't get stops against what's a lot of times, a pretty heavy one-man show offensively. Looking at you positioning the Celtics and saying, okay, they actually are going to be one of the favorites to win the East already next year. They just are.
If they do nothing and they hire an expensive bench coach and keep Joe Mazzulla, they don't do anything, you still think they're one of the favorites?
Well, the bench coach
you might be
thing,
right.
I think the bench coach thing is mandatory. It's mandatory. And, I
don't see how they can I honestly don't see how they can bring him back. I know they extended him halfway through the season, but I thought he was that bad.
Yeah, because I struggle with it. I'm not defending it. The not doubling Jimmy and letting that happen freely and not changing things up. And whenever a team is losing and they're throwing shit against the wall, the same way we saw Monty Williams in Phoenix, like as I'm watching it going, like you have like no clue like what you're going to get from, or you don't know what to do here right now.
How about 5 playoff losses in 2 rounds and 3 games? They lose at home 5 times.
They were 34 and no. They lost 9 times at home in the regular season.
Yeah.
They lost at home 9 times.
And they lost 5 in the playoffs. Here's the thing. I went to the Nuggets game last night, and I'm thinking, this Nuggets team's going to kill the Celtics. With their movement and how smart they are and how smart Jokic is, he's going to dissect them the same way Butler is. It's just they wouldn't have had a chance against that team. Not the way they're playing now. I will never... The best case you could make for it's the coach's fault. And I think I even agree with you. Sometimes it's just too easy to blame the coach.
And by the way, like real quick on that, the turnovers at the end of game 1, all right, the turnovers where they're like throwing it to Jimmy Butler in center field.
Right.
And, to not have that many fouls and have that many steals. And look, Jaylen Brown against a smart defensive team, they're all like, hey, dude can't dribble.
Right.
The dude can't dribble.
He's going to throw cross-court passes.
A couple of the drives that Jaylen Brown had tonight when he's just falling down and everybody's looking at him being like, so like, that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, wait, that's Mazzulla's fault. And it isn't, but there's enough other stuff with not having a different a plan of attack for Butler, against a zone. You guys just stop running offense. Like there's like 3 things you can
just
do
have
against
Tatum
the zone.
Dribbling the ball straight up into his zone for some reason. Fundamentally, they have all the same guys as last year, plus Brogdon. How is this team so much worse on defense? Like that's just fundamentally, how is that possible? All these guys are a year older and a year smarter, right? And they've been in a bunch of big games.
Right. They may not score, and that's what was their undoing against Golden State. They could always default back to like, we have a pretty special defense.
Right. And even in game 4 of the finals, they lose because Steph just leaves his body in the second half, right? They were playing good defense that whole series. And then offensively is where they lost it. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the Jaylen turnovers thing. The unforced turnovers with him, it's been a problem all season. I don't know if there was something like really wrong with his hand, but
but he did it last year.
Turnovers. Yeah, they aren't just turnovers.
Look, remember last year when they played Miami and they win the game 7 down there. But, if you go through it game by game in the turnovers, I was looking at like one game they were plus 15 in turnovers. That's an impossible number. It's like one thing to have like more than 10 than the team you played against. It's a joke with them. So I don't know. Look, let's take it back to the coach thing though.
Because I had a fake trade for you that I'm almost nervous to present.
Let's save it for a second. Because I think there's a problem. And I don't, this is the part of being in ownership and being Brad Stevens where you go, what will the reaction be if Mazzulla is canned after 1 year? All right. Now, it's actually happened a lot more in NBA history, and sometimes it can be a little deceiving with was he the interim and then had the job going into the next year and then was fired? So is it hired one full season, then fired? Is it a little bit of carryover? But I think the number's at like 21 coaches. So it's happened a lot. It hasn't happened a lot recently. It
happens in football too. But sometimes like Riley,
more in football.
When Riley fired Van Gundy right before or during the 06, I can't remember the timeline, but it was right before they won the title. He replaced him with himself. And Van Gundy allegedly had to leave because he wanted to spend more time with his family or something. But he got fired by Riley, basically. Riley just sensed like, I have this window, I have this talented team, and this is the wrong coach, and I got to do something. If you're the Celtics, you're a luxury tax team. You got Tatum, who's 25, who's about to enter. NBA history would tell us he's still not the player that he's going to end up being 2 years from now, right? Even somebody like Jokic even went up a level this year. 27, 28 are the key years for an NBA super-duper star. So we don't even know what his ceiling is. Not to mention all the other luxury tax, all the other stuff they're shelling out. And they don't really have picks. There's no real way to rebuild. You can't fuck around with a coach again. You can't be like, man, well, maybe, hopefully Joe will be better this year. I just don't think they can do that. And the reality is, it's if they did get rid of him, I don't know who hires him. You know, it's not just that they lost Ime last year. They lost Will Hardy too, which we talked about last summer, and we talked about how important he was. That combo is pretty devastating. So they're going to have to think like, do we want to risk another year here? Because we just squandered a year where Miami is going to make the finals after they went 44-38. They lost the play-in game. And in the fourth quarter of the second play-in game, it could have gone either way against the Bulls, who are now about to blow it up. So my guess is that he's probably going to get bounced.